Hello people of YouTubes. Thanks for watching this short video. This is part 2 of our tips and tricks video series for installing a Trackspec Motorsport cage kit into an S550 Mustang 2015 to 23. Let's look at some of the details of the final welding that happened over the last week. Brad, at the end of the day, loosened up the dash and moved it back, and that allowed him to knock the plinth blocks off the car and shift everything down. He had to knock the rear kickers off, and we may pull these lower bar tubes off, and that'll let the back go down, and that'll give us room to weld the tops of the cage. So it's sitting in there cattywampus right now, but that's on purpose so that we can start welding, final welding. About a couple days later, it's all going in. They've got all sorts of things welded. Plinth blocks are being burned in. We actually put these in the blasting cabinet, clean those up. The final welds, it's all looking good. And they moved the cage around quite a bit for Austin to be able to get to all the different places. But yeah, plinth blocks. Yeah, welding in these plinth blocks is tough because you're going into thin sheet metal, but with a MIG, with the 024 wire turned down, it's a lot easier, not blowing holes in it. So we're getting there. Last welds, looking good. So in part 1 of this video, we showed the installation of the cage kit. In that video, Brad pre-fit all of the 6 plinth blocks and all of the tubes of this cage kit. And they fit nicely, and they're nice and tight to the roof and give me plenty of headroom and foot room and room behind me. We pre-assembled the entire kit in about 15 hours. That's what Brad logged. And that was tacking everything in place and cleaning the spots for the plinth blocks. Normally, a fabricator would probably be able to weld that in another 20 hours. And there's a mix of MIG welding for the plinth blocks and then TIG welding for the various tubes. And our welder's a little new at this, first car cage he'd done, and struggled with a couple things and took a little extra time. Took about 35 hours to final weld this in place. And it's good to go. This is everything we need. So we have about 50 hours total. In hindsight, now that we know that this fits, we wouldn't do as complete of a pre-installation and would probably start cut that 15 hours down, and of course the 35 hours. I'd say about 40 hours would be a good estimate for a full installation of this cage after you've done it at least once, and if you're familiar with welding tubing together. So yeah, about a 40-hour job, stripping the interior and then replacing all the bits and pieces back. That's more time. We didn't count that. But I'm happy with how this turned out. The plinth blocks in the back are nice and beefy. We're gonna not put that cross tube in. This is a really strong part of the floor pan. There's a lot of structure in there, and we have a lot of things that mount there. The bulkhead panel is gonna have to be modified extensively. So Brad's already notching that, and we're gonna patch a couple holes here. So this will pass over, and we'll have a piece that closes up that gap to separate the cabin from the trunk area. We also added a little bit of extra labor by keeping the dash structure in place and keeping the factory dash bar. This again, this chassis is an absolute friggin' tank, and the factory dash bar is bolted in to the A-pillar structure, which is very strong. I thought long and hard about cutting some structure out. There's a lot of structure in the roof here and at the back, and of course in the floor and the B-pillar area. We could have probably dropped some weight out of this car on an all-out, full-on, no rules, crazy build. Yeah, we would have cut out a lot of the structure and probably saved 30, 40 pounds. The cage kit, we kind of overdid. It's a 1 3/4, 120 wall. It's 175 pounds of cage. We used all but one tube, and we're gonna, yeah, so it's probably every bit of 165 pounds. So that's a lot, but again, the car's getting fast enough to where I didn't feel safe with the little carbon doors. So this structure is nice. In the past, we would have joined these down to the structure, but again, I got to keep a functional door and the interior door panel So we didn't gut the doors. But again, I gotta have windows, in quotes. I gotta have a door panel, and you can see the panels we have here. And we kept the latch assemblies and things like that because we're running this in a street car series. We will run an SCCA, Apex. NASA is not at all a street car series. So as we started putting the cage together, we also installed this Anderson JTP wide body. That's an 1812 wheel that's just buried up in there. So we've got room for 18 by 13 wheels front and rear. We haven't put the rear bits on, but they're just as wide. So for NASA, we'll run a bigger wheel and tire package. It has nothing to do with the cage. It's just, one of the things we're doing. We do have some of these gusset plates or taco plates. This is going to go there in that little void area, and it'll help for side intrusion in a big crash. We'll also do some A-pillar structure. We'll add here with some gusset plates, as well as here potentially on the B-pillar. We tend to do that on other cars. As you can see, this car, which we also put together with a cage kit, we did add A and B pillar gusset plates, which we built here in-house. So that's it, folks. Thanks for tuning in part 2 of our Trackspec Motorsport cage installation on our S550 Mustang. Hopefully you learned some tips and tricks along the way, and we enjoyed putting this in. Again, we had about 50 hours, but I think a more experienced fabricator would probably do this in less than 40. So keep that in mind when it comes to pricing if you're going to order one of these kits and install it for a customer. Thanks for viewing. Bye-bye.